Question I got last week was, would I ever buy Ttcf stock back? Okay. And it's a fair question, right? You sell at a stock and sometimes you can buy that stock back later and, maybe it's months down the road, maybe it's years down the road, something like that, okay? And so I got that question. And so let me address that question because that wasn't something I addressed. I addressed, obviously why I sold and all those sorts of things. Would I ever buy Ttcf stock back? And the answer to that is likely, hell no. Are you freaking kidding me? This stock used and abused me for 2 years. Like, come on, man. Like, oh my gosh, you think I would... Come on, man. I like punishment, but I don't think I like that much punishment. Like, oh my gosh, you got to be flipping my flapjacks again? Oh, Lordy. Come on now, okay? Oh my goodness, okay? A few things. One is they got to avoid, obviously, going BK in all seriousness, right? That's the first thing they got to avoid. And that's going to be a tough challenge, I can tell you that. You look at their financials and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. They're down to, I think their latest numbers was something like $3-something million around on the balance sheet. And at one point they had over $100 million of cash sitting around that balance sheet. It's a disaster, right? So one, they've got to avoid going BK. Two, they're going to have to raise big money. And I don't know where they're going to get that big money because it's been months and months and months now. They've needed big money. And Sam Galletti, he's, certainly lent the company some money over time here. But they would have to raise big money. And it doesn't seem like there's anybody that interested in it, to be quite honest. Which I don't blame him because the financials have gone so bad at the company over the past, I would say specifically over the past 12 to 18 months now. It's just a complete disaster, right? And then they would have to get to profitability, right? To even be kind of like an investable company. Now, for a trading vehicle, I can understand people trying to trade in and out of it and doing that sort of stuff, right? Obviously, that's not the name of the game for me. But in regards to that one, it's not even worth it for me. There's so many other opportunities in the market. And at the end of the day, that was a stock I obviously got emotionally attached to, which is the number one rule. You never get emotionally attached to a stock in the stock market. These are vehicles to make money, not to get attached to. Stocks aren't people. That's the bottom line. And when you start to attach pride, ego, those sorts of things to a stock, it's never going to end well, right? And I should have cut that stock, obviously, a long time before I did. But I kept holding hope and, wanted to win that one so bad, and it obviously wasn't a battle we could win. That was an unwinnable battle. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a very high probability, especially with how many options there are in the market, how many other opportunities there are in the market. Like to even, I gave that management team 1,000 chances and I failed every time. Like, why would I give them, 1,001 chances? Like, come on, man. First thing I'm excited about this week is what happens with Palantir stock. This stock in the past 5 days is up about 25%. Yes, you heard me right. It's up about 25% in the past 5 trading days. And so I'm just really excited to see what happens here with Palantir now that it's had this. That's a pretty gigantic move in a matter of 5 trading days, 25%. I'm excited to see what happens here, okay? Now, a week like this is very important because what should happen with Palantir stock this week is Palantir stock should take what's called a breather, meaning essentially that stock should pull back at least a little bit this week. I'm talking a 5 to 10% type pullback this week. That's what should happen with that stock. With that being said, if this stock has another pretty decent upside week, meaning a 5 to 10% type move again or bigger, what that will tell me is that this stock is on its way to 1750, likely much quicker than I think a lot of folks are kind of expecting here, okay? And so this is actually a big week for the stock price of Palantir. Now, like I said, I'm expecting a pullback week. I think that would be natural. You don't usually get stocks just go up and up and up in a straight line unless it's NVIDIA. That's not usually what happens. So I'm expecting a pullback. But if the stock shows a bunch of momentum this week, we're off to the races, baby. We're 1750 before you know it, if that scenario plays out. So really important one to just kind of keep an eye on, okay? Let me give my opinion. Like, what do I think about the bear case in regards to Palantir? I will say this. The bearish argument for Palantir has been diminished greatly now. And I mean greatly. The bearish case was always this company's never been profitable. They're never going to be profitable. Well, that's changed, okay? The other main bear case around this one was obviously stock-based compensation. Look at how much stock-based compensation. Look at the SBC. Look at the SBC. And it was really bad a few years ago, right? And you've just seen that come down, and it's less and less and less of an issue now at this point in time. And so those were the two main things. Let's not confuse us that bears were talking about, right? Alex Karp, in terms of him, he's never really been seen as a main bearish perspective out there. Some people really like Alex Karp, some people don't, but he's never really been like from the bearish side, like, oh, Alex Karp's because he's a founder of the business. He's built this thing into what it is, so you can't really say that's a bear point. Other than that, sales culture at Palantir hasn't really been there. They're trying to obviously build the sales culture. They've always been standoffish to sales folks, so that was like a minor kind of bearish argument, but Palantir just came in with a nearly $20 million beat last quarter, right? So even that's starting to maybe fade a little bit. I wouldn't say that's the only, possibility of a bearish scenario is the macroeconomic landscape being in a weak place. Obviously, that would be a bad thing, right? If the macroeconomic landscape's in a bad place. But there's always the risk that maybe Palantir is just not going to be good enough at selling their product, right? And that's a risk we do have to consider as shareholders. They can have the most amazing product, but if they don't have the sales team to really get word out, right, and get customers, and especially commercial customers, because let's be honest, if we're really going to massively grow this business, we need commercial customers. If they don't have the right sales team and sales approach, then you can get passed up for inferior products because the other ones are just better at selling, okay? And so I think that's a risk factor we do have to consider. Remember, Alex Karp had for the longest time a very standoffish approach when it came to salespeople. And so this is a company that's just trying to build a sales culture. This is no CRM. This is no Salesforce, right? And so that is something I think we all have to consider in regards to Palantir. And they're going to have to build a great sales force for this company to really do the sorts of numbers we want this company to do $5 billion of revenue a year, to do $10 billion of revenue a year. You're going to need, I can tell you, a great sales team to make that possible. The big question is, when do they start cutting? I think that's where all the talk needs to go. And I still see on CBC, they're still talking about, when is the Fed going to raise next time? I'm like, you guys are worried about the wrong stuff. You need to be talking about, when does the Fed cut? Is the Fed cutting in 2 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now? That should be the whole conversation at this point in time. With how fast inflation is dropping month after month after month after month, there's absolutely zero reasons for the Federal Reserve to raise any more at this point in time. Like, they shouldn't even have raised this past time. That was a huge mistake on their part. But to raise even more, that would make absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. And especially the way CPI is about to drop here like a rock. I mean, trueflation numbers are, and remember, trueflation numbers were actually high last year. Trueflation numbers were much higher than actually the Fed was at, right? Or excuse me, the government numbers were at, right? The trueflation numbers were, 11, 12%. And government numbers were coming in 8, 9 during that time period. So it's a possibility. I don't want to get too excited, but it's a possibility these numbers are actually too high we're seeing from trueflation, right? It could be possible that real numbers are in the 2s right now. But nonetheless, folks, CPI is dropping like a rock. And so inflation is going to be back page news, in my opinion, within a matter of a month or two. And then it's all going to be talk about, are we going to face a major recession or are we not? And that's the whole question. So